an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Underlord Chapters 3, 4, and 5. In these chapters, we find out a little bit more about this Uncrowned competition that's coming up. And also, a new player has entered the field. Except he just doesn't want anything to do with this field. He would like to leave. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Andy for commissioning this episode. So, I think y'all probably are not going to be surprised to know that I found out that the title of the next book is Uncrowned. This book is called Underlord. There's just no way to not think Lindon's reaching Underlord. He's going to go on to this uncrowned ceremony. The beauty of it is, I can know that in my way, and it doesn't change anything like my experience in reading it, just knowing that he will get there, because getting there isn't really the point. Like, it's not the point. Of course, I want Lindon to advance. I want him to be powerful. I want him to be a badass. But I really appreciate that what the author keeps trying to sort of hammer home to us via different characters is that the journey is the destination, that you can't just want to advance for the sake of the power and the advancement. And I really feel like he has succeeded in getting that vibe across to me, the reader, because as much as I want Lindon to advance, that is not what I'm really focused on anymore. It was at first, I will admit that. It's not like I wanted him to have power for the sake of it. I just really didn't like that Lindon was at the mercy of so many shitty people out there. But honestly, now that he's reached true gold, I feel much less urgency about it. And that's not probably like a great thing, because he still has this enormous like dread god threat that he is apparently prepping to fight. And that's what's on his mind. So if I don't feel any urgency, I'm not really seeing things from his perspective the way that I maybe should. But I am more concerned about Lindon's everyday well-being as he's trying to just live in the world. And walking around, not even an iron yet before, I just really wasn't comfortable with how exposed he always felt to me. It was one thing when, in the very beginning of the book, I wasn't aware how easy it was to tell that he was low level. And then, once he reaches the Desolate Wilds and I realized, like, oh my God, everybody just needs to, like, glance at him. And it's not even like because he's wearing the badge, although he is. It's once you get higher level, it's way easier to read somebody's spirit, evidently. So the fact that he has reached true gold, it's not like we haven't met people who... Get that. Oh, Siri. She is just always up in my damn business. It's not like I don't know that there are far many more levels beyond True Gold out there. But True Gold is respectable in as much as there are plenty of people who that's as far as they get into adulthood. And that is seen as maybe like they could have gone farther, but it's not unheard of. And it's not looked at with contempt. And that was all I wanted. I wanted Lindon to get someplace that was acceptable, that people would look at him and have, at the bare minimum, the kind of respect that you would have for most adults who have seemed to get a hold of their life. So, as of right now, what I'm saying is, I want Lindon to progress, but I'm not as preoccupied with it before as I was. And I think that the author is aware that we're going to have that feeling. So he's able to stretch out a little bit more in these chapters and let our friends explore the potential of where they are and take on some missions for the Skysworn. And it is super fun. Guys, look. This would make such a great TV show. Just, let's say this is like where it ended. We get the progression up until True Gold, and then our friends decide that maybe the progression up until Iron, no, up until Jade, season 1, right? Then we've got up until True Gold, season 2. Then season 3 is just our friends open up their own investigative agency and become like PIs in the city and just do like, I feel like that would be super fun to watch. The weird shit that they would come up with so many other people having magic. It wouldn't be like urban fantasy that you often see where magic is sort of like kept secret. Or it would be very different and I think really, really fun. And I, for one, love the montage that we get later of all of the jobs that they go on, the ways in which their progression has led to them being able to intimidate people a little bit more, obviously, especially Lindon, because he apparently just has kind of a fearsome aspect in general, as we have seen. And now that he has the spirit to back it up, I mean, when we were in Akura Harmony's head, he was he wasn't a scaredy cat. And he felt Lindon behind him and was like, oh my God, what is that? That's awesome. I am so delighted. So yeah, I'm getting ahead of myself, but I'm super into this. Brian says, I mean, from the vision Ethan got, it sounds like Azrael wants them to essentially be this on like an inter-universal scale. Yeah, that's true. That is kind of what he said, isn't it? I just like, and I keep coming back to this, and I know, this is my hang up. I really want Lindon, before he goes flying off into inter-universes, to go home and be like, what's up, bitches? I'm a fucking gold now. I just really want that moment. And if I know this author, I think he's going to give us that moment. This author loves to give us triumphs, which I appreciate so much because I feel like it's become such a thing to get taken seriously as like a fantasy writer that it has to be miserable so much of the time. And nah, man, you can give us the occasional victory. You can make our people feel like real badasses and not have it feel as if we're always the underdog in like the traditional way. They can, and they still feel like an underdog, but we know that they have like tricks up their sleeves. But I just really want to see Lindon get to shove it in their faces, not just for the satisfaction personally, although I won't pretend that isn't absolutely a part of it, but mostly because there have got to be other Unsouled born eventually, and they need to know that they're super, super wrong about how this works. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if finding out that Lindon's a gold and he started off as an Unsouled, maybe that turns into a thing where now Unsouled are looked at as something of like a superstitious, like, oh, it'll be harder for you, but you have more potential than anyone because when the last Unsouled we had made it past the sages of our, well, there's an actual level named sage, the elders of our community. Anyway, all right, guys. I always run out of time, and it's because I fucking pontificate like this for 10 minutes at the beginning. Chapter 3 opens up with Emperor Huan, and he is thinking about how important appearance is as a king and the various things that he does to project an aura of gravitas, of strength, of unflappability. And he is waiting for one of the Akura family to visit. And he is with a bunch of people. Like the hall is filled with courtiers. Let's see. She had sent word to await her, but she had not said whether she meant to come in person or not. Therefore, he had no choice but to prepare as though Akura Charity could herself appear out of thin air at any second. I really enjoy this, that like their courtyard was packed, but no one crossed the invisible line separating the other half. That was reserved for their visitor. A half the courtyard for her, because that is just, it's a combo, I think, how much respect they're giving her and how much distance they would like to keep from her. I love the idea that she would be offended by that. I really wonder what how much this is an imagined concern and how much it's a real concern. We saw the way that Yeren talked to her, and I enjoy very much getting to see her from the king's perspective after Yeren's, because Yeren is so casual and unimpressed. And it's not as if Yeren doesn't respect the power, because we know she absolutely does. She respects power. It's just that she doesn't really let it affect the way she treats people. Exactly. So when we saw her talking to the sage, it was very much just like a regular conversation. The sage is like, what should we carve here? And everybody's like, oh, I have no idea. And Yeren's like, dragon. If you don't want him to be obvious, don't make him so big. This is silly. Meanwhile, the sage shows up and the king is just like, oh God, here she is. Oh my God. And he's like, it's all inside his head. He's keeping it very cool on the outside. But I think it's remarkable. We don't really have that in Yeren's head the same way, you know? The source of the light came into view only an instant later as 4 horse remnants galloped side by side through the air, their steps like drum beats. They were made of layered violet light, and flames of the same shade flickered around their ankles. They bared teeth and rolled their eyes as they ran, which was as much detail as he had ever seen on remnants. Through his spiritual sense, he felt the hidden heat of banked coals and the cool of a summer shadow. The Akura clan were famous for their use of shadow madra. It was not a distasteful power like death or blood, but an aspect of madra as natural as wind. Even so, it had mysterious properties that were difficult to pin down. That made dealing with any shadow artist a trial. Dealing with the Akura, even more so. I want so much to hear more about how shadow madra works. I'm sure we will. Mercy's really, like, her story is being slowly revealed, coming into her own, you know. I am just very eager. So she gets out, and she has an owl on her shoulder, which confirms to us what we suspected, which was that she's the one that's been sort of following Lindon. And she tells him, I am here to tell you about this huge competition, and this tournament is going to require the best and brightest of your communities. It's called the Uncrowned King Tournament. And Naru Huan is like, well, shit, Ethan. He's like kind of thinking to himself, when am I ever going to learn to not doubt what he says is going to happen? And she says this year's tournament will be the largest in history. And he asks why. And she's like, because we've had some shit with dread gods, and we really need to get our act together and present a very powerful front. Because, low-key, we almost got crushed. Now, look. Obviously, I understand that in general. But I don't understand, and if any of y'all want to help me out here, feel free, why the monarch of the Akura clan only was willing to help fight a dread god that one time, and otherwise is acting like, oh, next time, not it. Why not? It seemed like, is it just personal, safety? Is she really just worried about dying? Because that doesn't feel like a huge priority or problem to a lot of the higher ascended level warrior types, you know? We see Northstrider just chilling on a dragon that's a couple of miles long that he killed. Why is a Northstrider out here fighting dread gods? I don't understand why this is left up to, true golds and underlords to take care of. That feels bonkers to me. And I don't like it, and I resent it. I'm just saying. So, she says, we'll be inviting our vassal states to participate. The coming year will challenge not only our head family, but all our subjects, so they all must be tested. And he asks what stage their pupils have to be, and she says they can't be higher or lower than Underlord. And he's like, yeah, look, we appreciate the position that you're in. We want to help. We don't want to let you down or anything. But we don't got lots of true golds on the edge of Underlord running around. You have to understand that. And it says she looks around and he saw a glimpse of pity in her gaze as she let out a short breath. I'm aware of your situation. Fuck. Okay, look. I know I've talked about this already. Forgive me. But really, it's progressively more and more intense from the beginning of the series. We start out in Sacred Valley, where getting to Iron is considered pretty respectable. Getting to Jade is seen as top tier. We leave Sacred Valley and we're in the Desolate Wilds, and he sees golds left and right. And it's just like, oh shit, golds all over the place. Cool. Then he comes here, and there's a fair number of Underlords. Not a ton, but and they're older, granted. But nevertheless, we've met a good number of them. And especially in the last book, when we have this whole, this other competition at Ghostwater. So the more Lindon sees of the world, the more it becomes apparent that a lot of the communities he has experience with, people aim a lot lower or are able to achieve a lot lower than in other communities. However, every one of those communities, as we get further and further out, has access to more supplies, more elixirs, more general magical items to help them advance. And also we find out, in pretty short order, how much, if you have money, you are able to help your children to advance further and faster simply because you have that stuff. So this moment where she looks around and is just like, yeah, I know y'all are weak. I just wanted to grab her and be like, they aren't rich because you keep everything, you assholes. You're not better than them. This is the same shit as with rich people coming into poor neighborhoods and having disdain for the fact that the streets have trash in them or the yards aren't mowed. They can't afford people to come every week and mow their yard like you do, Martha. They don't have the time to do... They're working 60 hours a week just to put fucking rent out there and whatever. They can't decorate their house. They don't have the time to do their lawn care. It's just that kind of like disdain and behaving as if that's some sort of like personal shortcoming, or that your people aren't as good at the sacred arts as these other people. And it's simply lack of access to resources. And yes, there are people who are more talented than others, but that's not why the majority of people in this community can't get ahead. You just think that it's because they all, as a rule, are simply lazier? That doesn't make any fucking sense. It's because they don't have storehouses filled with shit to access to swallow and cycle for 2 days and suddenly jump ahead 3 levels. So anyway, I feel a way about it. So she tells him that she's going to give him and his people access to the sacred training grounds of the Akura clan, which are called Nightwheel Valley, which is quite a name. And she's like, you should be grateful, to which he's like, holy shit, I really am. You don't even know. But then she immediately follows it up and is like, I'm also going to be doing this for the Seishen kingdom. And he kind of stops and is like, oh, okay. And we wind up seeing some of those folks a little bit later. She says, if I cannot find even 3 worthy between you, you will all be instructed. Which I love the choice of that word. That is a really good word. It's not punished. Punished feels somehow less threatening. Instructed, there's a tone to it that feels much more like it's for your own good. Which whenever somebody comes at you with some like kind of cruel treatment that they really believe is in your best interest, it's much more damaging and scary, in my opinion. So that really made my blood get cold a bit. So he's thinking about the fact that, you know, he's going to have to really stretch his resources to make it so that people can take advantage of this opportunity. And yet he's like, I will do absolutely anything it takes, because the prize from the Akura family is probably going to be amazing. And my empire needs stability. And the best way to get stability is to get lots of high-level people who protect it and help its other citizens. And this just really would be a huge boon. So he's like, yeah, we're going to do this. We'll crush the station. This is no problem. And she emphasizes, like, anybody who competes, they better be ready to potentially die. It's not like they will die, but if they're not ready to, like, face that kind of danger, they shouldn't be participating at all. And then she says, that concludes our business on behalf of my family. And he's like, okay, so what does that mean? Because clearly you got some other shit you want to talk about. And she does. She asks about a young black flame. And for reasons that I cannot begin to understand, Naruwan decides to be cute about it. And is like, oh, well, there's no true black flame family members remaining. And he's saying this, like, as I'm listening to the audiobook and he says this, I'm like, what are you doing? Oh my God. Why? You have to know that she knows that this dude is out. What are you doing? And sure enough, she intimidates the fuck out of him with, like, straight up fear vibes. Let's see. Behind the sage's head, an apparition loomed up like the sudden appearance of a remnant. It was a huge book wrought of silver and purple light with a shining remnant eye in its center. The eyes swiveled, locking onto Naruhuan, and he began to sweat. Out of instinct, he released the veil around his spirit, trying to fend off this attack with his power, but he failed. Nothing happened. His soul remained tightly bound, his madra still. His body trembled as an inexplicable dread pressed in on him from the outside. "You should not lie to me," Charity suggested. She took a sip of wine. As quickly as it had appeared, the darkness vanished. Don't try to play with this bitch. Okay? It seems self-evident. I really would have thought you'd know better, sir. But you decided to be cute, and she could be cute right back, and it's suddenly not so cute anymore. No. Don't play with her. No. So, I love the fact, too, that this, book thing is apparently an Akura clan deal. And I want to know much more about that and how that goes. Because, Mercy said she used to be more powerful than she is now. Could she do something is this, I don't know. So anyway, she pulls that, whole thing back and leaves him sitting there, sweating and terrified on his throne in front of everybody. And apparently nobody else saw any of that. She directed it solely at him, so it just looks like he lost his nerve completely and pissed his pants for no reason at all. And he feels extremely embarrassed. It's just a humiliating moment, and I felt for him. So he tells her what she wants to know. She doesn't really say anything specific about how she's going to be dealing with him, because I think she knows that his loyalty is with Athen, and I suspect she is aware. Well, he tells her, I guess, about Athen's disciple, it says. So that must be self-evident that if he were to know what she's going to do, he'd tell Athen, who would guard his disciple. So she takes off, and we find out later that she's going over to the Seishens right after this in order to deliver the same message. But we won't see how that goes until a little bit later. So we go back to Lindon and Yeren and Mercy, and they are following Narugwe into the Skysworn Tower. I love this so much. Everybody who sees Lindon is horrified by him. Before, it was straight up just I can't believe there's a black flame. That is disgusting. You're pathetic. There's a sort of contempt with it. And now that he's reached true gold and is a black flame, it's much more oh my fucking God. Is that a fucking black flame? And they get out of the way. And I love Dross being are they afraid of you? Oh, you know what? It's cool. They don't hate you. I bet it's because I like you too much. Oh my God. And Lindon thinks to him, I think they just didn't expect us to reach true gold. And he's like, oh, well, fair. I didn't expect you to even stay alive this long. So Dross is pretty amusing, honestly. I'm waiting for him to get annoying. I feel like it could happen. But as of right now, I still find him very entertaining. So Narugwe leads them into a room, and he's like, just be cool, because you know that you're trying to prove to me that I can trust you again. So how you behave as you come in this room is going to be a big factor. And they walk in, and there's Bairo sitting in Narugwe's seat, by the way. Narugwe has to be get the fuck out of there. And Bairo is drawing this weird atmosphere towards him. It says, a thick, oppressive atmosphere that reminded Lindon of a nightmare. And Dross says that it's disgusting, like something slimy and sticky had a million legs and was crawling all over his face. If I could vomit, I'd be vomiting all inside your head. And I really want to know. He's got bright yellow eyes, and I feel like that has to be connected to whatever it is he's drawing towards himself. All I can think is like bile, because bile is yellow and it's disgusting. I mean, it's a byproduct of vomit and sickness, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. I'm just super curious what this is, because we never really get specifics on it. And Dross, considering he knows a lot, but he doesn't know everything, he never gives a name to this. And it doesn't seem like he's encountered this before, or, I don't know. I am dying to know, but, because, bile, the other thing, because when it says reminded Lindon of a nightmare, that's a really specific sort of image as well. Bile doesn't really fit. It's like, that's revolting, but it's not in that emotional way. A nightmare is something that kind of like gets you shook in your spirit. I just don't know what other, and it being yellow like that with his eyes. I mean, I guess the gold sign doesn't have to really like reflect the Madra specifically in the way that I think, but I don't know. I really have no theories, so I may as well just move on. So Byro and Yaren are arguing amongst themselves over the fact that she was trying to kill him, but he had already tried to kill her, yada, yada, yada. And Dross says something like, wow, damn, that janitor is really dedicated to his job. And Lindon looks up to see Ethan, who is polishing the ceiling with a rag. And I love this so much because Ethan is super used to being able to hover around and be undetected. And when Lindon spots him, he's a little bit startled by it. He didn't expect Lindon to see him. And later on, we find out that Ethan is very delighted at whatever it was that Lindon was able to do to increase the efficiency of his mind. And yet, Lindon doesn't share with Ethan what this construct in him is. He doesn't tell him anything specific about it. And I find this really interesting. Personally, I would be inclined to tell, because I am the kind of person who always seems to think that giving information equals getting information, and I would want to know as much as I could. However, I don't begrudge Lindon choosing to keep this to himself, and I almost respect him more for it. Like, Ethan has done a lot for him and Yaren in terms of helping them to advance, protecting them in some ways, but he has also proven he has his own game that he's going to play, and his own rules that he plays by that he doesn't let anybody else even know about. And I really think we see in later chapters how Lindon is pretty over that arrangement. He's getting extremely frustrated and impatient. And I can't blame him. I like so much the confrontation between Ethan and Cassius. When Cassius is like, do you fucking understand, dude, what it's like to have you assure us that it's all for the good, and we just have to take your word for it when we have no information to operate on at all? You don't get to do that and demand absolute trust and faith from us. You need to share occasionally. And that's really kind of where Lindon's coming from. And I see him choosing to keep this information to himself as a bit of growth from him, and also an indication that it sort of lines up with the way that he decided to fight back against the Skysworn in the last chapters, rather than simply let himself be taken in and questioned and be at their mercy. Lindon is choosing not to immediately bow to authority anymore, for I think a couple reasons. One, obviously, is he's stronger now, and he's realizing, for a lot of people, that's really all it comes down to. Are you strong enough to fight back? And if not, then we can do what we want. And he is not going to let that fly the way he used to. Second of all, I think he's just growing up. And as you grow and become a little bit more wise to the ways of the world, you realize that people you kind of assumed had your best interest at heart because they were the grown-ups who knew things, don't give a shit. A lot of the time, not only do they not give a shit, but they don't know what they're doing the way you thought. And I think that Lindon's just starting to be like, I'm going to look out for myself and I'm not going to rely on other people. I will work with him and we're going to try and move forward together. But I am not going to place implicit trust in him the way that I did initially. And also, let's not forget, they're one level below Ethan now. It was a very different scenario when Ethan was helping him ascend to iron from copper. And he was just light years ahead. Now he's an Underlord and these two are true gold and they're on the brink of being able to call him a peer. And that's going to change the whole dynamic too. And I just think that's all interesting. It's fascinating to wonder what Ethan could be like as a peer and how close is he? What's the next level? Is it Herald? Underlord? Overlord? Herald? Monarch? I don't know how close Ethan is to ascension onto the next level. I don't really ever get an impression that's a priority for him either. It seems like he wants to ascend because he's talking about it with them and their futures and, being able to slap around monarchs, as he says. But it's all in a very theoretical way. It doesn't ever feel like we see him doing things to personally advance. So I'm curious about that. So anyway, there's a weird moment where Byros says to Mercy, I will live up to your test, honored Akura. And Mercy's like, what? And she doesn't answer him, but Narugwe is like, what the fuck does that mean? And Byros says, I cannot say anything until the time comes. And Narugwe is like, dude, don't you fucking do this. You're not going to say that shit in front of me and then not explain what the fuck you mean. And Byros like, I am actually. I'm going to do exactly that. I was shown what's coming and I can't say anything until that I am it's approved for me to do so. I swore an oath to reveal nothing before the proper time. And I am assuming that he's talking about the Uncrowned King Tournament. But it might be something else. I don't know. So at this point, Ethan drops in, literally. And is like, hey, what's up? So I'm going to take these 3. And they're going to be my disciples. And we're going to just, keep on working together. Actually, 4. I always count Orthos separately because he's attached to Lindon, and I sort of take it for granted wherever Lindon's going, Orthos is also going. But I love how Narugwe puts up this fight initially and is just like, dude, no, you don't get to just stroll in here and take control of exactly whoever you want. And finally, Ethan says, I am going to absolutely promise, and he drops some veil on his soul a little bit to lend weight to the oath. I swear on my soul that if I'm allowed to take these young sacred artists as my Skysworn squad, I will do everything in my power to lead them to their own benefit and the benefit of the Black Flame Empire. In addition, I will follow your lawful orders in the course of my duties, and I will personally spend no more time in your presence than required. And Narugwe says, deal! So quickly. He's just really afraid that this shit isn't gonna last. And I love when they leave. And Byro is saying to Narugwe, dude, I can't believe you just gave him just what he wanted. And Narugwe is just like, man, fuck off. You don't know what a beautiful day this is for me. Get out of my face with this. So the next day, they get themselves fitted with Skysworn armor. Yeren does not take to it. She calls it basically walking around in her own coffin. Mercy, for her part, seems super comfortable in it. She's like really liking it. And I can't help but wonder if there's something about it that sort of supports her body, because it seems like she has a sort of clumsiness. Almost what I keep thinking about with her clumsiness is what happens with like a neurological disorder, where the messages that your brain is sending to your body are being like misinterpreted, or your muscles can't function exactly how your brain is telling them to, but they're like trying their best. So you get these uneven sort of movements that don't quite do what you want. And I wonder if there's something about the armor that like helps with that messaging, you know? I don't know. But I just keep just really wanting to know more about Mercy's deal and why she is like disabled basically in the way that she seems to be. Also, I love how Orthos sees them in their armor and is just like, all right, yes, okay, see? You guys have the idea. Now get a shell. Obviously. It took you a while, but good job. And what is so enjoyable about scenes like this is I really feel like the Ortho digs into each character's reaction to things. So Yaren complaining and being like, I'm too constricted, I don't like it, absolutely seems true to me. Yaren wants to do things the way that she's always done them. And she's pretty much like, how, like, it's been working for me so far, I don't see the need. So not liking this, Mercy is enthusiastic about everything and always like kind of eager to be cooperative. And so her like trying it on and being excited and asking how she looks feels in line with things. Orthos laughing at humans and being like, I got armor already. That seems right. And then we've got Lindon, who's basically got the manual for the armor that he's flipping through and reading everything about it and going looking through like the accessories catalog. 100%. Me and Lindon are alike in this way. He wants to get as much info on shit as he can because he has been at a disadvantage so many times. That's all that has saved his ass, is like knowing the ins and outs of a thing, because often he likes to play tricks and we haven't seen him do that in a while because he's so like, he doesn't have to rely on that anymore since he has so much more power at his disposal now. But this like over preparing by reading as much about it as he can, it's a mechanism of controlling a situation you don't feel like you have control in. And that kind of habit dies hard. And it almost never fails to pay off in some way. Occasionally, for somebody like me, I can find myself overthinking things, sure. But I more often find myself being like telling somebody who allegedly knows a lot about like an operating system or whatever, oh, well, actually, you can do such and such. And this person's been using it for 3 years and had no idea because they figured it out as they went along and they never actually went and read a summary of how to do certain things. So, and the combo of the fact that he's learning how it works, all of the potential that this thing has in it, and he's like shopping at the same time. Oh, forget it. Absolutely. We would be buds on this topic. Absolutely. So yeah, he's noticing all of the things that the armor can do because naturally, after watching Renfei simply be sliced down the center of her body with some shadow madra, it makes sense that he doesn't really have a high opinion of the armor anymore. But he's realizing like it can do quite a bit, and she just happened to be up against somebody with the exact right weapon to use against her. And he's looking at the things that it comes standard with that can be like taken out. Basically, he's planning to mod the fuck out of this thing. And he's really excited for it. He's going to take the shit to Gesha and be like, pimp my armor. And they're going to figure out all the shit that they can do with it. And I am very excited about it. The only thing I worry about is getting too dependent on the armor. And then something happens to it, and suddenly these weapons that you're like kind of reliant on are no longer at your disposal. But what can you do? You take advantage of what you've got while you've got it, with the understanding that it may have a expiration date stamped on it. Also, I like that he's not wearing the armor, but it says that he's wearing the tight-fitting cloth suit you're supposed to wear beneath it, which really put me in mind of stormtroopers and how they have like the black body stocking, or like long underwear is the other way I often think of it. And I have not really been picturing the Skysworn armor in any particular way in my head. But once I read that, I immediately thought of basically green, shiny stormtroopers, which I don't feel seems terribly off the mark. That feels right in its way. Except that it doesn't come standard with a helmet. You have to buy one yourself. So, and one of the major drawbacks of adding too many things to this sort of suit is that you have to power all of the constructs and all of its like abilities with Madra. And it will just draw a lot from you. And so you don't want to overload it. But on the one hand, the chances of having to run more than one of the constructs at the same time is low. And two, Lindon has way more Madra than the average person. So he's going to be able to do more with it than the average person. And that's pretty helpful, you know? I wonder, because, you know, he was keeping his cycling technique secret from Dross, but Dross is in his spirit now. So I imagine that he is aware of his technique as of this point. There's no real way to hide it any longer, and I can't imagine that Lindon just hasn't been using that technique this whole time. So, So, okay. Yeah, he's figuring out how he's going to mod it, and then Ethan pops in and is like, all right, guys, so I have something new and exciting that we can all go work on. And rather than be excited, everybody is just tired. They all sort of react with this like, oh, fuck. And Ethan, thankfully, is like, because I will remind you all a while back how he said the kind of training he would give Lindon would cause Lindon to run screaming at the sound of his name. But thankfully here, he says, believe it or not, I do believe rest is valuable. You've worked hard, and any weapon pushed to its limit for too long will break. However, time does not wait, so I am afraid I must push you one last time. One last time. I don't know about that, sir. That feels like a promise that you can't keep, but okay. So he says, and in return, I'll tell you anything that you're interested in knowing. What do you want? And Yaren just says, Underlord. And Lindon's thinking to himself, yeah, there was a lot that I could ask him, but pretty much Underlord is the main thing. And he says there are 3 steps to reaching Underlord. Mastering yourself, mastering the world around you, and then connecting yourself to the world. It is the 3rd step that is the most mysterious. Lindon asks Dross about Soulfire, and Dross says, that's the byproduct of connecting to the world around you. And don't worry, I know everything about advancing to Underlord. But since my memories are all jumbled up and pieces of them are missing, let's listen to him first, right? Just to make sure he knows what he's talking about. So he talks in general about things. Opening up your soul space, which we've heard about. Second, you must weave soulfire from aura. Many would-be lords and ladies fail at this step, but I have some tricks you may prove useful. And then lastly, you must call upon your soulfire to reforge your body. And that is apparently not simple. And Dross recalls that this is what Akura Harmony asked him about. He said he couldn't complete the 3rd stage and advance to Underlord and asked me how. And Lindon says, what did you say? And Dross gets cut off before getting to answer, and I desperately want to go back and have him answer that fucking question. Because things move forward in such a way, it doesn't occur to Lindon to ask again, and I need him to ask again. Lindon, stay focused, buddy, okay? So Ethan says many Underlords don't know the secret to triggering the soulfire. Or wait, no, he does tell him. Doesn't he eventually? I think Dross tells him, like, I told him that he had to put himself in, like, harm's way or something. And Lindon realizes, oh, that's why when he felt me coming, he was like, all right, here we go, motherfucker. But yeah, there was more of me before. Yeah, oh, it's right after this. Pfft, I'm an idiot. Told him to put his life at risk and all would become clear. Which, he says, why would I say that? That sounds like terrible advice. Oh, God. It is a personal revelation, a true, deep understanding of yourself that causes the soul fire inside you to resonate with the aura around you, activating your advancement. I'm super curious what that's about. Like, what was Harmony supposed to learn about himself to help him advance? What was his motivation? It doesn't feel like maybe he just didn't know. Really, truly, like, wasn't honest with himself about it. And let's see, I'm trying to, because there's so much conversation here between him and Dross, but a lot of it is just Dross, like, complaining about the fact that Lindon pulled him off the tree and he lost a bunch of information. And then Lindon apologizing and Dross being like, you can't take this shit so seriously. I'm just whining. It's fine. And then he says, the third step is the weird one. You'll want to discover your reason for practicing the sacred arts. And this is my personal favorite line. If my memories of Northstrider have taught me anything, it's that the sacred arts only get weirder. Which seems right. That definitely rings true to me. I mean, you can do basic shit initially, and then things get more and more esoteric. And it's just, the shit we've seen so far has been somewhat straightforward. And then all of a sudden, we've got sages with book constructs or whatever they are, staring down kings and terrifying them. Like, shit's getting weird now. So Ethan's like, okay, so you got two choices. We can go on missions or we can go and train for Underlord. And they're, like, obviously split on this. Mercy wants to do missions. Lindon and Yaren want to do Underlord. Orthos doesn't really say one way or the other. And what it comes down to is Ethan's like, by coincidence, both of these things are the same thing, because to train for Underlord, we're going to need money, and to get money, we need to do the missions. And I didn't realize until this point that they didn't know he wasn't the patriarch anymore. So, yeah, he's been keeping that shit to himself, and all he tells them here is that he doesn't have access to Aurelius' money the way that he did. And Lindon is, like, really bummed about it, because he expected to be able to take advantage of that a little bit longer. And Lindon mentions that he has found, like, some treasures in Ghostwater that he could sell. And it says he hated to give up money he could use, but if Ethan really knew of a way to advance them all together, then Lindon would contribute. We don't actually see those things sell later. It might not have happened yet, but I really appreciate Lindon being willing to do that, because other characters might be written in such a way that they feel much more possessive of that stuff. And while I would really understand it, because you kind of earned that shit, there are people out there who know more and are going to be able to make better use and more efficient use of that money. And I feel like Ethan is absolutely one of those people. So it would frustrate me if a character was keeping that secret, because I would feel like they aren't going to be able to do as much with it if they could if they shared it. So I only have 5 minutes left, because that's just how I fucking roll. We get the montage of them doing all of these different missions, and it's really great. There's all kinds of, like, monsters that come up out of the sewers. There's people who are out here, like, making, like, elixirs that don't work, selling snake oil, basically. And I love when we're in Yaren's POV, how proud she is of seeing, like, how scary Lindon is to people now. And also she thinks about how Little Blue doesn't want to touch her still. And Yaren's trying to act like it doesn't bother her, even though it clearly bothers her. And Ethan is not really participating, despite the fact that he's got more power than any of them. He's letting them take care of everything and sort of sitting back. And she's noticing how Lindon is getting more and more irritated at the fact that Ethan doesn't want to train him any further in pure Madra techniques. Once we're inside Ethan's head a little later, we find out that Lindon, in his opinion, first of all, doesn't have the capacity to handle some of those techniques yet. And secondly, he is doing too much in too many different directions. He's trying to get 2 cores upgraded. He's got his remnant arm that he's still learning to control. He's clearly done something with his mind that's advanced that. There is just a lot for him to work on and get used to before he can add another thing to his plate. But Lindon doesn't hear that really when he's told. He's just sort of treating it anytime Ethan suggests that as if it's an excuse. And Ethan just doesn't want to help him. And I think that's interesting. Why? What does he think Ethan's getting out of not helping him? Does he feel like he's still being used, maybe? So, Ethan takes Yaren aside, and he tells her that he told her a while ago, I don't know if you remember, Yaren, that I was going to give you something. And we find out way later that this actually, what he gives her here wasn't the thing. He commissioned a very special pill that was made for her and her paths. But because he was removed as Underlord or as Patriarch, he doesn't get to take it anymore, which I don't really they're willing to reinstate him. I feel like he should be able to ask for that shit. But, and he seems to be a little bit abashed at the fact that he promised a thing and now he can't deliver. So he gives her this dream tablet, basically a book, or he gives her 3. And they are all extremely important information about managing the blood shadow path. And one is from a researcher who examined the bleeding phoenix directly. The other's from the man who would become the sage of the Red Faith. They're his experimental path notes. The third I added myself. It's the Aurelius Family Library's analysis on the uses of blood shadow. And Yaren is deeply grateful in her way, but she's very disappointed also because she was hoping to pursue. She doesn't want to focus on her blood shadow. She wants to focus on the sword path. And so she's kind of resistant to advancing any further, relying on the blood shadow. She doesn't like it. And I wonder if she isn't going to find that as she learns more about it, she figures out she can consume it and get rid of it, because I feel like that would help. But maybe she won't want to by the time she learns how to actually manage it. I don't know. So then the great scene, I talked about the montage of them beating creatures and whatnot already, but there's a great moment where Ethan's thinking to himself about how this all worked. And it turns out that they're in the middle of busting a crew who had been drugging people, murdering them, taking their remnants. And they used some of the remnants for parts and others they sold to soulsmiths. And these people are they're murdering lunatics and they're terrible. And they have a puppet remnant that is locked in this scripted vault. And there's one dude that the other 4 don't have managed who has gotten away, and he's gonna open this thing and release this puppet remnant, and he's really fucking feeling smart about it. And he comes to this vault and opens it, and there's Ethan just sitting in the vault smoking a pipe waiting for him. And honestly, guys, this was some badass shit. That is a baller move. I mean, what a G. So that's a pretty great scene, and I just love it. So I have to cover chapter 5 pretty quickly here, but they are heading out. First, we have the meeting with Cassius, which I've kind of talked about already. And Cassius is really angry at the fact that they removed him as patriarch in order to get him to understand his obligations. And instead of trying harder in response, Ethan just disappeared. And Ethan's response is basically well, clearly you guys don't trust me, so fuck all y'all. And Cassius is like, man, you don't give us reasons to trust you because you don't tell us anything. And Ethan, I respect the fact that he kind of stops and finally is like, yeah, all right. That's fair. That's true. And this is when Cassius is like, all right, so the Heart Sage is looking for 3 Underlords. And Ethan's like, yeah, she is. I happen to have 3 candidates picked out. And I love this. Everybody is surprised to hear him say 3, especially Mercy. And Ethan gives her this smile, and like there's a feeling to me of Mercy thinking she wasn't going to get back to any kind of power, and he's sort of reassuring her that he thinks she'll be able to like ascend again. And I just, again, so curious. So they head out with Ethan, and they do not know where they're heading, which basically Lindon takes that as this place we're going has to be super fucking dangerous. And it turns out that is exactly right. It's the Night Wheel, I think is the Wheel of Night, Night's Wheel. Whatever it is, it's the training ground for the Akura clan. And this pillar of darkness is very intimidating and opens at like a particular moment that Ethan apparently knows about and is ready for. So they all get advanced entrance into the Nightwheel Valley. Thank you, Andy. They get advanced entrance ahead of everybody else. And I have to assume that is a major advantage. And I love the fact that Mercy knows what it is. As soon as she like hears how Ethan describes it, she's like, wait, what the fuck did you just say? And Ethan has to be like, all right, look, guys, it's going to look really scary and you're going to want to run away. I need you to not run away. You're going to need to run into it. And all of them do this except for Orthos, who's like, nope, 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 nope. Like I imagined that nope octopus, but a turtle. And Ethan is aware and ready and grabs him by the shell and pulls him back. And I just found that shit hilarious. So on the other side of the like valley, I guess, Naru Huan is listening to the speech from the sage, and she falters in her speech at one point, and he can tell because he feels it as well. It's because some other people already have entered ahead of time, and they maybe were not supposed to do that. I don't know if there's a specific rule, if it's just seen as disrespectful or what, but maybe they're going to be like, well, good on you. I guess you got in ahead. There are times where it's like breaking a rule is frowned on unless you're a badass, and then all of a sudden it's seen as like plucky, So then last part, the Seishen Kingdom. And we've got Prince Seishen Kiro. And Kiro has kind of like, he's an interesting character. This dude is, I believe, on the brink of Underlord, or he is Underlord. Can't remember. I think he is Underlord already, if I'm not mistaken. And the Sage of the Silver Heart is here to find some likely candidates to enter this competition. And Kiro's dad is kind of an embarrassing dude. His dad is sort of that guy who really wants to be a King Henry VIII type, where he's like hearty and jovial, but he's not smart enough to really get the respect that you need to back up that kind of like quality and have people still take you seriously. So he keeps being kind of like cringed at his dad's behavior. And when she's looking for some competitors, his dad puts him, Kiro, forward. And it turns out that there's another girl here that is way more powerful. Kiro says, like, thinks to himself, I'm not even the most powerful Underlord here in this little group of people right now. Never mind in the fucking, like, kingdom or whatever. And it seems that Charity knows this as well, because she zeroes in on this girl, Ryusai Mira. And he just calls her Mira from here on out. And Mira, evidently, is a badass. And he's aware and fully admits she is stronger than him. And it's obvious the two of them are somehow involved. And he wants her to get the opportunity. He's actively rooting for Charity to choose Mira over him because he knows he isn't up for it. But his father has too much pride and doesn't want this, apparently this like maintenance girl, to get more attention than his son. Meanwhile, Kiro has a brother named Daji who is a bloodthirsty little tick. And this dude is pissy at his brother for being ahead of him. He's pissy at everybody for like holding him back. I'm sure he sees it that way. And he just wants to go out there and prove himself and just rip people apart. And basically what the sage says here is, I'm going to need somebody to put the hurt on this dude Lindon for me. Now, I don't want you to kill him, but I want you to like fuck his day up. I would like him to not come out of this doing super well. And Daji is like, let me do it. I'll fuck him up. I'll kill him. And she's like, I don't want him killed. I don't want to do it. And he's like, it's fine. I'm a high gold and he's just a true gold. I can do it. And finally she stops and she's like, you will die going up against him. You will. There's no question. And this dude seems absolutely shook at the fact that he's always been able to take care of it, even if people were more advanced than him, apparently. Like, you know, probably only just one place further than him, but still. And King Takata says, describe him to my oldest son, and you have only to sit back and watch. Charity looked to Kiro, who stood up straight, focusing on the sage's chin. He was too afraid to look into her eyes. So this is a theme with Kiro that I think we're going to see. He is afraid to talk back to his dad or make his dad look bad in front of other people. He wishes that he had the guts to defend Mira in front of his father and be like, no, she's the one, not me. And he doesn't really have it in him. And I'm hopeful that he will begin to get over that. If we see more of him, that would be a nice bit of growth, because I don't want him to be a coward. And it's not like he's a coward without cause. He's not simply afraid. There's also some tactical political aspects to why he doesn't want to do that. But, you know. So, yeah, he felt Mira behind him. This would be his way of living up to her expectations. If they could both be selected by the sage, then he would thank the heavens. If they couldn't, he could push her forward. He could not match her in the sacred arts, but at least he could do his duty. And that is the end of chapter 5. Some overtime, as usual. When will I learn? But thank you guys again so much for listening, and thank you, Andy, for commissioning the episode. And I will be seeing you all again soon with a new one. Actually, tomorrow. Until then, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.